This is visible, no? So very good morning to all of you. And today we are organizing the online workshop on topic deep learning in ecological studies. And we are very happy to see that a large number of participants has shown interest in this particular workshop. And as we came to know from our distance learning team that over 10,000 participants has registered for this particular. So let me first thank you, all of you, for your interest, and all the organizations for promoting this particular workshop in their different part of the country. And now I will just share my presentation. I hope my presentation is visible to all of you. And so this is the overall program of the workshop. And we are just starting this now at 10:30. And this program will end at about 1 o'clock. So you can see that we have planned a number of lectures. So the first lectures that will be on basic concept and application of ecology about deep learning. So that I will be delivering, and I am head forestry and ecology department at IIRS. My name is Hitendra Padalia. And then after my lecture, there will be another lecture delivered by Dr. Ishwari Dutt Rai. He is also faculty in forestry and ecology department at IIRS, and he will be talking about fine scale vegetation classification using deep learning. And after that, the third lecture will be delivered by Dr. Subrata Nandi, and he is also faculty at forestry and ecology department at IIRS, and he will be talking about deforestation monitoring using deep learning. And then followed by a lecture from Shri A.K. Jha. He is scientist at geoinformatics department at IIRS. So he will be talking about species identification using deep learning. And then at the end of the workshop, Shri Ravi Bhandari, he is scientist at IIRS, and in the distance learning and geoprocessing department, and he basically will give you a demo on how you can process the satellite data for habitat classifications. So you will have some kind of hands-on, some kinds of a demo experience on this particular implementation of deep learning. So this is in nutshell about this workshop. So each particular this talk will be about of 25 minutes duration, and then we can have a few questions of 5 minutes. So total 30 minutes are devoted for one session. And at the end of the session also we can take questions, and I would request that you can type your questions in the chat box, and we can compile all the questions, and we can the speakers can give the answer of the question at the end of his lecture, or also at the end of this particular workshop. We can again, if some questions remaining unanswered, So those questions we'll also try to answer. So basically, we have tried to capture a different aspect of application of deep learning in our workshop, and mainly focusing with the on satellite image implementation of deep learning on satellite image. So my first lecture, so I will be basically talking about the basic concepts and also giving you some idea about the application of deep learning. And I presume that because there are a large number of students have joined this particular workshop, and I think that they may not have even the background of remote sensing and GIS, and there may be many newcomer in this, and there may be people those who have some experience of remote sensing, GIS, and even some might be working with processing of satellite data with machine learning. So it is a very diverse groups. So we will try to be very simple in trying to explain you what is this deep learning and how it can be useful for ecological studies. So I hope this you are able to see my slides are changing. And Ashok, is it my slides are changing properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So, so just let me give you an introduction. What is this deep learning? So, so as you are, in ecological sciences or another science, other sciences also, we generally process data, and data, we process data mainly traditionally through statistical means. Okay, we have statistical methods. They are applied on normally distributed data and non-normally distributed data. And statistical methods has been very popular for hypothesis testing and drawing inference from the data in different application areas. And the other part of this is statistical methods also have been applied on a very limited data when the number of sample the size is less than 30 also, and even slightly larger data sets also statistical methods are applied. So and it gives you very good understanding of errors of estimates, and also statistical methods gives you very good understandings insight. It will give you about which are the most important variables which are playing role in predicting a particular output. So statistical methods are very explicit. At every steps you can understand what is happening inside the method, and full story will be in front of you. So on the other hand, the in biological systems or earth system, there are many non-linear processes also, and you don't have a linear normal distributed data. For example, in a forest ecosystem you have trees, and trees, one kind of trees, for example sal forest, and they are growing in large numbers, so they follow a normal distribution. But in the same forest you have a tiger, and you hardly have the sighting of tigers. Occasionally you find tiger sightings. So this kind of data is not normally distributed. It can follow some other kind of distribution like poison distribution. So these are non-linear phenomena, and non-linear phenomena are very difficult to predict also. You need a lot of data also, then only you can make some prediction. So now coming to the artificial intelligence. Why we are saying it artificial intelligence? Because there is something called natural intelligence, and on this planet humans have the natural highest level of natural intelligence. Means they can actually sense the things, they can hear the things, they can feel the things, they can walk. So many things they can do with the help of the brain, and the neural system is there in the body. So similar things the researchers and scientists wanted from computer to do. If you can train a particular program, software program, or a particular machine like a robot to do certain things which behave just like the humans brain acts in the similar fashions and take the decision, so then it is a kind of intelligence you have built in inside the system. So this is about the artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is nothing but you are actually making a particular computer program or a particular machine to think like humans and to act like the humans act, and to take decision, very complex decision also, because we take very complex decision in day-to-day life. So this is about artificial intelligence. Now, what about machine learning? So machine learning, again, it is a part of artificial intelligence. Okay, it is a artificial intelligence is the, you can consider it as an umbrella, and within the artificial intelligence you have machine learning. And machine learning also, you know, they are a set of algorithms, and over times a number of machine learning algorithms have come into picture. For example, support vector machines, random forest is nowadays very popular machine learning algorithms. And in last uh, uh, 5-6 years, in variety of fields random forest is being used. So this is a machine learning algorithms. And what is this? So machine learning algorithms basically they have different architectures, but the common thing is their performance improve if you give them more data. Now, why I am saying more data? Because statistical classifications, even if you give more data, statistical methods, after a certain point of time, they don't give the higher accuracy, and the RMSE root mean square error will also not reduce. So your R square value will also not increase. But in case of machine learning, if you feed them with more training data, so they can give you better results. So that is what you normally nowadays we classify satellite image with random forest, and we find that it gives us a very high accuracy. If you give more number of training data points, it gives you better accuracy. Okay, and higher accuracy, which we have not been able to achieve using maximum likelihood classifier, for example, which we normally use for classifying the satellite images. Now comes the deep learning. What is deep learning? And the terms itself suggests that there is a learning, but it is happening at a very deeper level. Okay, so deeper level learning when you want to have, so this is a kind of, if you the analogy is just like humans, we have childrens and we make them learn over time, and they learn by a lot of hit and trials. And but when they learn it very in a very robust manner, and then they commit very less mistakes, or they become expert of doing certain things. So deep learning is like that. More and more data you feed into the systems, and it can even understand very complex things and then start taking decisions. Now, but actually, when you want to differentiate it from machine learning, so deep learning is again a subset of artificial intelligence. And deep learning differs from machine learning in a very clear-cut way, that deep learning has a neural network kind of systems. Okay, and whereas in machine learning you don't have any neural network kind of thing. For example, random forest or support vector, in random forest you are using decision trees, okay, for classifying the data. But in deep learning you have a unique system of neural network where you will have input layer, you will have hidden layer, and you will have an output layer. Okay, and this could be multi-layer depending on the complexity of task, what task you assign. For example, I said that whether in a particular forest there is a we have put a camera trap, and whether there is a tiger presence is there or not. So more and more images you provide of camera trap, you analyze, and someday you will find that there is a tiger. And this deep learning can analyze this kind of data in a very efficient manner, which manually sometimes not possible to do also. And it can also tell that yes, there is a tiger, not only one tiger, there are two different tigers. Okay, so it basically learns from the data. Deep learning, the algorithms are designed in such a manner that they learn from the data, and then they function and they learn more than what we expect. Actually, they learn more than what we expect, and that surprises us. And that actually translates into higher performance in terms of detection of a particular animal from the photographs, or you classifying the satellite images and all those things. Okay, so machine learning and deep learning both, of course, require data, more data than the statistical methods, but deep learning require even more data sets. And the other thing is the deep learning that we will discuss later on, that it is slightly difficult to more computational resources are required to implement the deep learning task. And depending on the what kind of application, what kind of data sets you have, what kind of pattern you want to infer from the data, the complexity of task is decided, and then accordingly, more computational resources is required. Okay, so we will come again on these like two where these two approaches differ. Okay, so now let us just see that how things has evolved over time. So we had a time about 17th and 19th century when we were mainly analyzing the ecological data with statistical theories like probability theory, statistical inference, hypothesis testings. And then in around 1950s, we have a development of simple neural network that's called perceptron. And so you can consider that as far as neural network development is there, which is the main part of the deep learning, has developed in 1950s. But after that, for a long time, no progress could happen in this field, and artificial intelligence, so-called. But mainly because of at the time the computers was not so powerful processing. There were limitations in processing the data. But then again in 1980s, the boom came in terms of machine learning. And then machine learning came, and then machine learning algorithms came, like for example, support vector machines. Then in support vector machine, if you have heard, there was a time when we were analyzing the satellite data with maximum likelihood classifiers. And at the same time, then support vector machine came, it started giving us very good results, particularly when your area is highly heterogeneous and mixed pixels kind of situation is there. And their support vector has given us very good results. Okay, and then after support vector, random forest came. And then when random forest came, we found that people started using support vector machine for classifying microwave data, hyperspectral data particularly, because these are high dimensionality data, hyperspectral, microwave data, and optical data. Also, if you classify multi-temporal, multi-date data, it becomes a high dimensionality data. So it was found that support vector machine and random forest, they're much superior in their classification performance. In one of our own study, we have found even random forest, we have found giving far better result than support vector when you consider very large area for classifications, for vegetation classification. Okay, so and then you see that the deep learning revolution came in 2010, and here also in IIRS also we were working, but during the 2010, though it is written here, actually in real sense it has not come to application scientists like us. The deep learning methods has become popular, what I see, in last 6-7 years only among us. And during 2010, we were in fact only limited to working with the simple neural network, like neural network approaches, like feed forward and back propagation approaches. We were at the time we were knowing that deep neural networks can give better results, but this was not actually universally appreciable that neural networks can give better results. But yes, that kind of things has come during the time frame of 2010 to 2015. But 2015 onwards, we are saying now that the deep learning is gaining a lot of momentum. And now we have particularly the convolutional neural network, CNN network, has become very, very popular among the remote sensing community. And likewise, since the arrival of many other kind of deep learning algorithm, for example, Google Translator, which translate one language to another language very efficiently from English to Hindi, Hindi to English, ChatGPT. So all these things has gained a lot of attention, given a lot of attention to deep learning. And now slowly, actually, in our field also, in ecology and biological sciences also, now we have started experimenting with deep learning methods. So I just searched the literature that what kind of literature is available on this particular. So by now you have a very good review papers have come. For example, one is on application of deep learning in ecology, in methods in ecology and evolution. Other is on machine learning and deep learning, a review for ecologists, deep learning for environmental conservations, a review of deep learning technologies for detecting animals in aerials and satellite image. So this is a very recent paper, and this gives you very good though, because for us we have to understand what way deep learning is functioning, what are its potential, what are its limitation, and what is the implementation. So all those things are written in a very lucid manner, a very simple manner, and once one can go through all this paper, and then he can really understand what is about this particular development. So as far as ecology is concerned, so in ecological application, we have multi-scale applications are there in ecology, and sometimes we require identification of individual from the satellite images or photographs. Sometimes we require identification of population from the satellite or from the photographs, and sometimes we require classification of the landscapes, for example, vegetation types and large areas. Sometimes we require understanding the ecosystem diversity, the abundance of the animals or birds in ecosystems, and other ecosystem properties like primary productions. Okay, and then we also do biospheric assessments. Okay, biospheric assessments means we do, for example, where could be the conservation areas across the globes. Okay, so there are a variety of application we require in ecology, and in these slides we have listed that many studies have recently come on at different scale. They have used deep learning for the in their study. Okay, now again the same thing is more or less repeated here, that we require sometime feature extraction from the image, a particular feature like tree or animal from the image. Other time we require to classify entire image into different classes, and sometimes we require analysis of time series data. Okay, like for example, deforestation study, we will showing the time series data, how the forest loss has happened in different time period, forest loss and gain. And similarly, we require automated analysis. Sometimes we have large data sets, and we don't have facility to manually do the things. We want that things should be automatically done. For example, many forest change alerts nowadays are coming from satellite images. So this such kind of application, automated analysis is required. Camera traps large volume of data is collected for tiger census in the country. So if we do deep learning, then we automatically come to know when there is a tiger is sighted at a particular place. So we automatically know from the analysis of camera trap images using deep learning that yes, there is a tiger found. And the predictive modeling also we do, and dealing with complex ecological problems. And in ecology there are sometimes very non-linear and very what we guys say, such kind of pattern. For example, insects outbreak in forest, you cannot know when a particular insects pest outbreak will take place in the forest area, because it depends on a lot of factors, environmental factors and local soil and many other management practices. So such events are very, very rare events. But if deep learning is used and it is provided with a lot of data, past history and other things, then it has ability to give you answer. So that's why we are banking so much on now deep learning, because traditional methods are not so capable of answering such complex questions, which particularly in ecology and biology domains, there are a number of such problems which are very complex. Okay, then where is the source of the data for ecological and for deep learning in ecology? So if you consider satellite data, we have series of satellite data, large archive of satellite data at different scales. So this is a big data, and this is a large data which can which is very useful for deep learning application. Deep learning can really perform well in such situation because data size is very large. Now UAV data is also coming. Number of images are taken from UAV. It is very difficult to manually analyze all those things. So again, this is also another source of big data. at very high resolution for particular for individual feature extraction. Similar citizen science data, large communities are being involved in collecting data using smartphones. So this data also becomes a very useful data sets for applying deep learning algorithms. And some of such data sets are nowadays openly available online. If anybody want to test any deep learning algorithms, even for birds, for butterflies, there are online databases available, and wherein anybody they've labeled data is available and which can be easily used by anyone for implementing any particular kind of deep learning architectures. Similarly, you know, data coming from camera trap, I have already told that from Wildlife Institute of India we have a large number of camera trap across the country. Forest Department has established. This is a huge data sets where so many animals are there in those data sets, which needs to be identified using the deep learning algorithm. Sound data is another new area in ecology, soundscape ecology, where we want to understand the presence of animals which otherwise are not difficult to cite. For example, amphibians. In Western Ghats, for example, large amphibians population is there. And if you have acoustic sensors stored in these ecosystems, that these data can serve very well for deep learning application for their identification. Satellite telemetry data is another data. And now many species in India are being satellite tagged and their movement is being recorded. So this data is again very big data kind of things. And so this data, if in conjunction with the environmental data, it can be very potential data for deep learning, developing deep learning applications. Now coming back to the basic architecture. So what is there in the deep learning? At first place I told you the difference between machine learning and deep learning is the architectural difference. Here you have an artificial neural network. So you just see that here you have some input layers and you have then hidden layer and you have an output layer. Okay, so this is the simple architecture of a deep learning network. And in between what is there, that there are connections are there. There are connections which joins input to the nodes in the hidden layer. And similarly, there are connections which joins the nodes from hidden layer to the output layer. And these connections are weighted. Okay, so what happens that the inputs goes to the hidden layer, and at hidden layer there is the activation function. Okay, and then hidden layer is connected to the output layer. So in this process, what is happening basically, you are giving the inputs, and then inputs, based on inputs, the activation function is learning what is there in the data, and then accordingly it is producing an output. And then you are trying to validate the output with the independent data sets or whatever way. And then you are saying that my output is not appropriate, the accuracy is less. Let me improve the model again. So again, you are back propagation you are doing, and you are asking the network to readjust its weight. So each connection, the weight will be, the weights are given. Weight is then learning. If more weight is given a particular connection, it has become better trend over time. Okay, so this way the weights are readjusted until the time you get a desired output. Okay, so this is the very simple way how we define the artificial network, and in which there are input layer, hidden layer, output layer, there are weights, there are biases, there is activation function. They are also changing, different type of activation functions are used for improving the performance of the neural network. Now, there is common neural networks which are used are feed-forward network, and recurrent neural networks are being used particularly in our community. So I'm just giving the example of them. And then feed-forward, we will showing you an example of convolutional neural networks, CNN for classification. Recurrent neural networks are also there, which works on time series data, analysis of time series satellite data. And in feed-forward network also you can have multiple hidden layer. Depending on the complexity of your task, you can actually define your architectures. And in recurrent neural network, you can have one hidden layer, but you can actually, depending on the again it depends on the what kind of task is at hand. So so these are the two common network we are currently using. Now let us just see that how you will implement it. It is a very broad overview. Later on you will have a demo also. So supposing you have the first task is whether I should use machine learning or deep learning, I have data, whether I should, which one I should choose. So basically you can at first level, if you have a very specific task and you have large volume of data, so then you can go for the deep learning. And otherwise, if it's general purpose task, you can go for machine learning. Okay, once you have decided that you are going for deep learning, again, if you have labeled data, the training data which is available to with you is known to you and you can label it, then you go for supervised deep learning. Otherwise, there is an unsupervised deep learning are also available. Okay, if you go for supervised deep learning for tasks like identification, classification, detections, so for example, then you have to select a architecture. Architecture means whether you are going for CNN or you are going for RNN. Okay, so you have there are different family of deep learning networks. Out of that, depending on your task, you have to select a data set, you have to select the net. Then framework, which framework you will choose means, framework means whether you will do it in a there are different type of framework available, later on we'll discuss. That will include the programming language you are doing and the platform also where you will be doing it. And implementation, finally implementation is there. And then what will happen, first you need the data. You can divide training data and the validation data as you do with machine learning. And then you will train the model and you will check the output. And if your output are not desired at desired accuracy, then again you will do refinement of the model. Now, while doing the refinement of the model in deep learning, supervised deep learning, you have to check that whether your labeling of data is proper, enough number of sample points are there. You can increase the number of training point, or you can altogether go for choosing a different architectures. If suppose one type of deep learning method is not giving you desired accuracy, you can switch over to even change the architecture also. Okay, so this way, and then you can do the fine tuning of parameters also. There are many hyperparameters are there, and there are other parameters. Just like with any model, there are different settings are there. You have to change those settings in order to improve the performance. Then, so this is just again our the next presentation also they will discuss these things. In basically in deep learning, when you start training the deep learning, there is something called hyperparameter. Hyperparameter is nothing but, you know, in otherwise also in modeling you have parameters. Okay, so here hyperparameters are there are a number of hyperparameters and they are set at the beginning of the training set. So this is the difference in machine learning and the deep learning. In deep learning, you have to set the which all parameters you are there. You have to set at the beginning of the, so that you have to force the network to learn what you want from the network to learn. Okay, so there are different kind of thing, particularly for example in convolutional neural network, you have filter size, you have a number of layers, stride, padding, learning rate, batch size. So I'm not going into detail because again it is next lecture it will get repeated. And then there are certain called optimization algorithms within the while implementation of the deep learning, and something called regularization approaches. So because you know you have to make a child to learn. So in this process you have to for example, if you want to a child to learn to ride a bicycle, so you have the training program you have to devise according to the learning rate of the particular child, and you have to divide the session into different batches so that he can learn it. You cannot just give him the handle and ask him to ride the bicycle without supporting him. So this will lead to he will fall down. So in order to avoid such kind of things, you have to define the training program and the way he can learn it faster as well as learn it properly, so that he will not commit any mistake. So this is the kind of philosophy goes behind this. But there are other technical things like, you know, you should not do overfitting in the machine learning, and so for that there are regularization approach. Okay, optimization approach are also there, so that proper learning is there. So I will not go into detail of that. The next when our particular examples will be discussed, at the time these things will come again. And these I was talking about the framework while telling about the workflow. So these are the frameworks nowadays. These are libraries are freely available and open source, and like TensorFlow framework, Caffe, PyTorch, deep learning, 4J, Keras, MATLAB, Apache. So very popular one is the TensorFlow. PyTorch is also there, and then the background languages are different languages, not only one language. Python is there, Julia is there, and so, but most commonly used programming language at present for deep learning is the Python language. Okay, so you should have some idea of the Python. If you are having some understanding of the Python, you can really work well with the, so like our student also work here. So initially they learn the Python language, those who want to opt for the deep learning in their projects. So they basically first learn the Python language, and then they can actually do such kind of case studies with deep learning. Okay, then finally I will just comment upon the that what kind of resources is required. This is a challenge because our students also do it here, project work, and they sometimes face a lot of challenge in implementing the deep learning because it requires uh, high computational power. It depends on the project also, what kind of data sets you have, and if it is a time series data, it may take more computational power. Okay, and if large volume of data set is there, then again complex operations are there, then high computation resources are required. And but normally normal CPU also you can run deep learning. It is not that normal CPU also nowadays are very powerful, you can run, but if complex data set, large data sets are there, then of course what you require is the GPU. So GPUs is also started coming with now the computers, and GPU actually allows you the parallel processing. Okay, and this is where the deep learning get benefited. So that's why in the computer system where high-end GPUs are there, we are able to perform deep learning in a much better way. Okay, so and there are certain nowadays cloud platforms also there, like Google Colab, Amazon. So they are paid sometime, so they are also used for analyzing the developing the deep learning applications. So at finally what you can see in my slides here now, what deep learning is. Basically deep learning performances increases when you supply more volume, data volume, it performance increases as compared to other methods like statistical method, traditional machine learning method, even shallow neural network with one layer. Okay, when you have more layers in the deep neural network, the depth of learning of neural network increases and its ability to perform complex tasks increases. So here you can see very well, this is a graph between data volume and model performance, and deep learning does outperform others in data if higher data volume is provided. But the limitation part of deep learning is that deep learning though gives you very high accuracy, and but interpretability of the deep learning is again very difficult. What is happening inside, and it's like a black box again. But so that's why in terms of interpretability, other methods has high interpretability like statistical methods or machine learning methods. But in terms of getting accuracy, the deep learning methods are very well. Okay, and particularly in ecology, as I said, there are many problems in the field of ecology, and there are complex interaction between species and its environment, and there are population ecology, and there are many different types of data sets are being collected. Non-genetic data sets are being collected, species distribution and population data sets have been collected, environmental data sets are being collected. So this is so this type of technology, this type of methods, deep learning has vast scope. In coming year, you will find that a lot of studies will be coming using deep learning studies. So thank you very much. With this, I end my presentation. I have slightly exceeded the allotted times. So now I will, so straightforward, I will now ask our next presenter, Dr. Ishwari Dutt Rai, to start his talk. So Dr. Ishwari, you can share your presentation. I have given you the permission.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. You share your slide.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Are the slides visible?
Yes, visible. You make it in full mode, and then you may start.
Yeah, now it's a full mode, I think.
Okay, okay. So you can start.
Yeah, thank you. So, welcome all the participants in the second lecture of this workshop. And the topic of this is the fine scale vegetation classification using deep learning. So, we'll see some of the examples of the deep learning in vegetation classification. So, coming to introduction, so vegetation classification is one of the important tasks, especially in the environmental monitoring or land use, land cover mapping, and many aspects of the ecological research. So, remote sensing which basically involves collecting the data from satellite or the other aerial sensors. It provides very rich source of information, especially useful for the vegetation ecology. And as you have seen in the earlier lecture also, there are many statistical and machine learning methods which are widely used and useful and proved very useful to enhancing the image classification accuracy in vegetation mapping also. So this deep learning is one of the fastest growing trend, especially in the big data analysis where we have very high volume of the data. And it is successfully applied in various fields like natural language processing, image classification, speech recognition, or many other fields also. So in the recent times, this deep learning has proved to be very important in fine scale vegetation classification and mapping if it is provided with very good training data and hyperparameter tuning. So coming to the hierarchy of the vegetation mapping at different levels. So one of the broadest scale, the vegetation maps are basically developed using the broad scale patterns on the climate, like the latitudinal patterns or the altitudinal patterns, which basically we call the biome level. And these maps are basically generated using the climatic patterns, one or more parameters of the climates, and some broad or very coarse scale remote sensing data also. And in this hierarchy below is the vegetation type level, broad association of the species in a particular area or which represents a certain kind of climate of the area. And further going to in this hierarchy, we need very complex or the more resolution satellite data and also very good the classification algorithm to segregate different, like in the communities, we have to differentiate different communities, or further the gregarious formations like the species or the dominant formation in a particular area. So we need more complex or more higher resolution satellite data with high spectrum or the special resolution as well as good learning algorithms. So these are some of the examples earlier conducted here in the IIRS also, like the biome level mapping using the Holdridge life zones as well as the broad the vegetation patterns like the tropical rainforest or the temperate or the Himalayan temperate forest. So these are the very broad vegetation maps generated using the coarse resolution satellite data, like the WIPS data of almost 200 meter satellite, the special resolution. And further, with the improvement in the data, satellite data resolutions, the vegetation types were mapped for the entire country using the different season satellite data, like one in the dry season data or the wet season data, so that we can easily differentiate. And using the visual image interpretation, these maps were generated for the entire country. And because in many times we need very fine scale information like the distribution of the important communities which are very critical for the conservation and other applications. So with further development in the technologies, we used the machine learning based algorithms like the random forest for the community level classification in the forest. This is one landscape in the Himalayan foothills, and we successfully mapped many communities in a small area with very good accuracies. So to further narrow down these classifications and further improvements, we need more sophisticated learning technology or the learning algorithms, and we found deep learning is one of the important tools in this direction. And the studies suggested that it outperforms the traditional machine learning classifications especially in the land cover mapping or the vegetation classification, and also the object-based the image classification problems. So these are have the superior performance, especially for if you talk about, they are very good in automated feature extraction, and in this way they reduce the need for the manual feature extraction, and they have ability to handle high dimensional data, like they can handle the high dimensional data, and by that using we preserve the information of the data and also improve the classification accuracy. And this is useful in improved spatial context understanding. So we can capture the spatial context, leading to the more accurate and consistent classification results. And also we can effectively integrate multi-source data like the optical, LiDAR, or the microwave data in these machine learning platforms. And they have superior performance as compared to the traditional classifiers or the machine learning algorithm. And they have capability to end-to-end learning. So we do not need to interfere in between. So for this, we selected one of the landscape with very complex terrain as well as very high heterogeneity in the alpine, the plant community. So this is the one of the landscape in the Western Himalayan region, the part of the Greater Himalayan National Park in the Himachal Pradesh. And in this photograph also you can see different communities, how they are adapted with very microclimatic conditions, like with very short distance the community changes according to the slope aspect and the availability of the soil moisture and the ground on the ground. So in this we can see almost 6 or 7 communities are distributed within a very short distance, and this the green shades, basically they are different communities itself, like the mixed herbaceous. They have multiple communities distributed as per the microclimatic conditions. So to challenge was how to differentiate these vegetation on the ground and also map these or the segregate these in the classification and generate a good the map with a good classification accuracy. And for that, a very the systematic survey was conducted in the landscape, and the ground the inventory data was collected. So using the hierarchical clustering methods, we generated different clusters of the sample plots with high similarity in the presence of similar species. So in this way, we can see almost 9 different communities are segregated in the alpine landscape, and these green shaded boxes represents the one particular association we call the mixed herbaceous community. And within the mixed herbaceous, we found there are many communities present on the ground, which are especially distributed at different locations. So the task was to see how they are different in their species composition, and how they are differentiated using the spectral susceptibility using the satellite data. So in this, you can see that if you plot the spectral reflectance curve for the different communities, so we can see each community represented by a different or a unique curve on the satellite data also. So it means these are separable using the satellite data to some extent. And more interesting was to the interest was to segregate these further the mixed community, especially the mixed herbaceous community, how they are separable using the deep learning algorithm. So we used the UNet deep learning model. Basically, it is a semantic segmentation techniques and the type of CNN architecture that initially proposed by the Ron Berger for the biomedical applications. So it is basically based on the fully convolutional network designed to generate a segmentation map with the same spatial resolutions of the input image. So it was modified to give accurate classification results with the fewer training data. So it has two structures. One, the left side on the screen, that is called the shrinking path, and one is the expanding path in the right side. And this shrinking path, also called the encoder, used to extract and capture the context of the image, and the expanding path combines the feature maps. So basically, this is the encoder is a traditional stack of convolutional and the max pooling layers. We will see further in details. And this expanding structure, the decoder is used to enable the precise localization using the transposed convolutions. So this is an end-to-end fully convolutional network that only contains the convolutional layers and do not contain the dense layers, because of which this can handle any size of image. So in this, we can see it basically takes the satellite data with the labeled information also about the different classes or the target objects for the classification. And further, if you see in the details about the shrinking path, so each block in the contracting path or the shrinking path typically consists of two convolutional layers. So these blue arrow represents the convolutional layers, followed by the one activation functions like the rectified linear unit. So basically, these activation functions introduce the non-linearity in the CNN model. So applying them to the outputs of the convolution or the pooling layers, allowing the network to understand the very complicated association and make the complex decision or the non-linear decisions. So each the digits above these blocks represents the channels used. So suppose we are using a grayscale image, so it represents by the only one channel. So if you are using the RGB image, so the number will be 3 on the input image. So likely if you have multiple channels or on our input image, so the numbers will be represented above these blocks. So using the convolutional operations, basically we use the multiple filters to extract the feature from the input image, and the filters or the kernels basically these determines the depth of the output tensor. So here the depth suddenly changes into 64. It means we used the 64 different the filters in that convolutional operations in this step, and in this way we extract the feature from the input image. And after each convolutional, we have the operations like the max pooling. So in the max pooling, typically basically with the stride of 2, it reduces the special dimension of the feature maps, like the height and the width of the image, and it also preserves the depth of the image. So all the channels will remain same, but it will extract the important information and basically reduce the special extent of the input image. And by the end of the contracting path, the spatial resolution significantly reduced. And here you can see the spatial resolution. Initially, it is around 570 into 570, but at the end, it reaches only up to 32 into 32 pixels. But the number of channels here are like 512. So the number of channels increases significantly at the end of the shrinking path. So to understand further the convolutional operations, so this is basically a 2D convolutional using the kernel size of 3, or the filter of 3 by 3 filter, using the stride of 1 pixel. So basically the kernel size defines the field of view of the convolution. So basically one common choice for the 2D convolution is the filter of 3 into 3 pixels. So the number of pixels or the number of kernels or the filters applied in each convolution that determines the depth of the output tensors. So the stride defines the step size of the kernels when traversing through the image. So default is 1. So when we are using the stride of 1, so the output extent of image will be exactly same as the input image when we are using a padding. So padding means it defines how the border of sample is handled. So a padded convolution will keep the special outputs dimension equal to the input. So in this case, we are using a padding of 1 pixel, and in the second case, like in this image, no padding was involved. So the output, the results will be the pixel, the number of rows and columns in the output will be less than the input image. So this convolution operations, the multiplication of the filter numbers with the input image, and the resultant are the center of the kernel filters. So in this way, if you are using the padding, the output extent will be same as the input, and if we are not using the padding, the output will have the smaller size as compared to the input. So in this way, in the shrinking path here, you can see as each step of the convolution, the size of the image or the output is reduced from the margins. So one first is 244 into 244, but it reduces to 282 and 280. So it means that no padding was used in this process. And the pooling means it is applied to the encoder to reduce the spatial dimension and capture the hierarchical features. So there are two types of poolings. One is the max pooling. So here simply you can understand in the max pooling, we take, if you have the stride of 2 by 2, so we take the maximum value for each the stride or the each of the filter. So 20, 30, 112 and 37 are the maximum values in this. And in case of the average, we took the average of the blocks in the pooling. So in the expanding path, so each block in the expanding path begins with the upsampling operations, that is the transposed convolution. So basically in the transposed convolution, the input layer is slides over the kernel. So in the case of the convolution operations or the 2D convolution, we move the filters over the input image. But in case of the upsampling using the transposed convolution, so the kernels were slides over the images input, and using the multiplication or the summations, the outputs are basically they basically doubles the size of the spatial extent of the input image. So in this case, the input of the 2 by 2 pixel and the kernel of 2 by 2, it generates a output of 4 by 4. So it basically doubles the size of or the spatial extent of the image. But in this case, the depth of the image remains the same as compared to the 2D convolution. So the feature map from the upsampling step is concatenated with the corresponding feature map of the contracting path. So this basically doubles the depth of the combined tensor. So here the depth reduced to half, but again using the concatenation means the adding the first convolution layers and the upsampling layers, resulting in the double depth tensor. So here in this you can understand. So using the concatenation and the this process. So here these are the cropped images from the contracting path, and these are the output from the this up convolution. So it basically doubles the depth of the output image. But using the in the upsampling, it reduces further the depth of the image. And this depth reduction helps in the feature refinements, like the reducing the number of channels to refine the abstract features, learning the contracting parts, and importantly focus on only the special details for the segmentation. And also it helps in the output compatibility. The network basically ensures that the final layer has the same number of channels as the desired output. So if our target is only a binary classification, so at the end of this expanding path, we will get only one this channel or the single band image, or if our task is the multi-class segmentation, so the number of channels will be more. Like if our target is like 10 or more the classes in the output, so the number of channels will be like the number of our desired the classes. So these are some of the basics terminology that used in the unit model. So we used Sentinel-2 data with the 10 bands and the spectral 9 spectral indices at the 10-meter spatial resolution, and we used the cartodam, slope, aspect, elevation, and other variables. So libraries were the Keras, TensorFlow, NumPy, or the GIS, Pandas, etc. And the platform was the Jupyter Notebook, which is one of the popular platforms used for these operations. So one of the important aspect is model training and the accuracy evaluation. So these are different example of different curves representing the model accuracy. So these are the accuracy versus the approach used in the modeling. So basically, the approach, one approach means that the unit, the model has seen all the training image and their corresponding ground task, ground truth mask for the segmentation exactly once or one cycle. So during each approach, the model takes the batches of the input image, passes through the unit encoder and this decoder architecture, and computes the predictions and compares the outputs. So we tested the models, and basically the training loss in this model training and accuracy evaluation, the training loss measures the error of model on the training data set. Basically, it's calculated at the difference between the predicted output and the actual level using the predefined loss function. And similarly, the validation loss means the accuracy of the model on the unseen data. So generally, the training loss is greater than the validation loss. It happens early stage of the modeling due to the many regularization functions like the dropouts, which basically apply during the training phase of the model. So coming to the output of this exercise, so here you can see how accurately different classes were mapped on the ground. So left side is the a high resolution satellite data, and the right side of the screen is the output images from the models. So you can see the small the patches of different vegetation communities in this yellow circles. They are represented or they are mapped very well on the outputs also. And their special extent also you can easily visualize in these maps. So how they are the edges are determined or delineated using the unit model, you can see easily. So this is very high resolution output at the 10-meter resolution. And further, you can see the patterns of different communities on the ground and also in the output maps. In the area of very high heterogeneity on the ground, you can see the outputs of the classification on the mapping also. So further some examples here, you can see clearly two different communities are here and some intermixing patches are here, and these are very good mapped on the by the model also. So this is the overall the output of this exercise, and you can see the special patterns of the distribution of different communities on the ground. They are very accurately segregated by this model, and these maps are highly useful to basically to see the distribution of different communities. Basically, each community are very important to basically they contain the different number of species. So many species, if you know the exact distribution of these communities on the ground, so we put some conservation measure or the management applications for the protection of certain target species on, especially which are distributed on some target communities on the ground also. So in this way, we found this deep learning exercises are very useful in the tiny scale mapping of the community, especially in very complex landscapes with very high heterogeneity of the communities on the ground. And by leveraging the hierarchical representation of the data, this deep learning model, they can outperform the traditional machine learning algorithm in the learning and also giving the desired outputs. And these learning methods can seamlessly integrate data from the diverse sources also, like if you have multiple satellite data of the multiple resolution, those can be integrated and can be used for the mapping, classification and the mapping of these complex vegetation patterns in the any size of the landscape on the ground. So this is one example of the deep learning, how we can use in the vegetation mapping. So you can put your questions on. So later on we can take or we can take some questions right now if you have the time.
Maybe Dr. Ishwari, maybe
Yes,
we
sir.
can we'll take later on, maybe. Okay, at the time.
Okay, sir. At the end of. Okay.
So because now we'll have the next presenter. So thank you, Dr. Ishwari, for your talk. And now I request our next presenter, Dr. Subrata Nandi. Dr. Nandi, you may now upload your presentation.
Is it visible?
Not yet, not yet. Yes, now it has come. You can make it in full mode and then start.
It's in full mode now.
Okay, okay.
Wow.
So you may start, please.
Oh, thank you, sir. So good morning to you all. So in this session, I'll be basically discussing on how to monitor deforestation using deep learning. Now, there are introductory classes on deep learning, so and as well as there is one more lecture on how we do classification using deep learning. So I'll skip some of the basic things. But to start with, when you say deforestation, deforestation basically is a conversion of forest to another land use or the long-term reduction of the tree canopy cover below the minimum 10% threshold, which FAO defines deforestation as. Just a minute, please. Yeah. Yes. Now, there are many impacts of deforestation, as we know. It could be from environmental point of view, like loss of biodiversity, habitat, etc. Then it could be from economic point of view also, loss of livelihood for forest-dependent communities, etc. And then it could be social as well, like land use conflicts and displacement of indigenous communities and so on. So then the question comes, why to monitor this deforestation? As we know that forest plays a very important role in carbon sequestration, then climate regulation, then of course water cycle, soil stability, and then it is also habitat to many terrestrial species. And there are it is the application of monitoring is related to many policies, then governance, then many conservation planning. It is also related to disaster management as well as community engagement. So the key challenges in monitoring is when we are trying to monitor vast areas and there is temporal variability. Sorry. Yeah. Or other special complexes like fragmented forest or mixed land use. So there are the challenges we face when we monitor forest or other monitor deforestation. Now, there are many traditional approaches through which deforestation is monitored. But these traditional approaches like ground-based surveys as well as basic remote sensing techniques, so ground surveys, they take they could be very accurate at local scale, but not at the when we talk of vast areas, and at many time time durations also. It could be expensive, time consuming as well, and then the basic remote sensing techniques like visual interpretation, then using NDVI or normalized difference vegetation index. So these are the techniques that are used for traditional approaches. The problem with this, or the limitation rather, with these issues are with these techniques are it requires massive effort, manual effort. I cannot handle large data sets, and now as I landscape are very difficult to manage. So moving into modern approaches, so shift to automated, scalable, and data-driven methods using of advanced tools like machine learning for classification, and as well like deep learning for high resolution or hierarchical feature detection. So there's a need of let's say deep learning in deforestation monitoring. Now, what are the advantages of deep learning in deforestation monitoring? One is automated feature extraction. It identifies complex patterns. Then scalability, process terabytes of data from region to global scales. And then accuracy also, it outperforms the traditional methods. It is proven by many studies. Then temporal analysis also tracks across recurrent models. And then major application, I would say, is in land use landform classification, then forest canopy density mapping, and then change direction for deforestation and forest regeneration as well. So on this background, I would like to show you what we did, our experience basically on utility using deep learning for deforestation monitoring. So I'll show you a case study wherein deep learning based methods or models rather was used for monitoring deforestation. So this case study is basically done on, to monitor the large scale deforestation that has occurred in the eastern Himalayan foothills of India. Now a question comes, why do I select this area, and what is the utility, why there is a need to use deep learning in this study. Now the eastern Himalayan Himalaya basically is a part of global biodiversity hotspot, but it is experiencing extensive deforestation, or it is rather experienced extensive deforestation over the years, which significantly contribute to biodiversity loss and also then affects the climate. So long-term monitoring of this forest is of these areas needed, because this landscape is very dynamic. Every year there is a change in the system. So here comes the role of deep learning techniques for deforestation monitoring in this kind of scenario, where it is very dynamic, it's very complex terrain, and then and every year there is change in that thing. So in this context, this study was designed to to have a long-term comprehensive study for large-scale deforestation using UNEP, a deep learning algorithm. Now this is the area which I'm talking about. This is the let us say this is Brahmaputra River, if you can connect. This is, and then this is Kaziranga, and this is the foothills of Himalaya. Now if you connect with this year, see the foothills, and the green color represents, of course, this natural color. This represents forest. Now see these areas and these areas. So hopefully this cursor is visible. So if you see the foothills, the amount of or the pattern of deforestation in these areas from 1984 to recent years. If I zoom a part of this in true color, it will show something like this. You can see in the zoom part the extent of deforestation that has taken place in this area. Now this is the basic background why we have taken up this study in this area. Now, this study area, the importance, rather than this, there is immense pressure in this forest. This area, as I earlier also mentioned, is a part of Himalayan global biodiversity hotspot. This area, the study area, whatever is here shown here, is it has 8 reserve forests, 1 national park, so 1 national park, and 1 wildlife sanctuary. And a huge deforestation has been reported on this area. In earlier studies, we also have reported. Now, the data sets which were used for this study, basically the data sets basically applied for training, validation, testing, and prediction. This comprises imagery from Landsat series of Landsat 5, 7, 8, and 9. So basically Landsat TM, Landsat 7 ATM plus, then Landsat 8 OLI, and then Landsat 9 OLI also. So 3 bands are used to have a consistency over the all Landsat series from 5 to 9. So RAD, NIR, and SWIR band were used, and then NDVI, NDWI, UVI, these 3 vegetation indices or the 3 spectral indices were used, vegetation and moisture indices. And then on texture variable, so gray level covariance matrix, in that homogeneity of NIR band, then contrast, dissimilarity, and correlation was used. So spectral as well as texture variables as well as topographic variables like elevation, slope, aspect were also used. Now, this is the basic methodology that was followed in this study. So if you see here, in this case, in Landsat of 2024, as I mentioned here, 2024, this was used to train here train data and then have a classification. Now here comes a question like, why do I need a deep learning to do classification of this area? Now what our aim was to, when we do classification basically, so we train this, we have a training set. Let us say we are doing supervised kind of classification. We have training sets. We train based on the information. Let us say forest, agriculture, settlement, water body, this kind of classes are there. So we, based on the ground information, we train the data. We have the training sets and we train the model. We have the classification. Now, even in machine learning approaches or traditional approaches as well. Suppose we want to have series of classified images. From, let us say here we have used from 1990 to 2024, every 5-year intervals we have mapped. Now in this case, what is happening, like if I, since the area is very dynamic, as I showed here, yes, the area is very dynamic. So if I make a training site for 1 year, this cannot be applied for other years. Reason behind, suppose I keep here, let us say in this area, in 1984 or 1990, I put, let's say this is forest. So I label this as forest. But in 24 or 2020, it has become non-forest, agriculture. So this again, I need to change the training site. Yeah, so it is with other areas as well. So the class has changed since the area is very dynamic. The class, the training site, the attribute of the training site has already got changed. So it cannot be used for previous years or maybe 5 years back. So to address this, this method was used. So main aim was, if I train the data at one time, use it, so I classify the thing and then label each class and then train the data, so that with the same training data I can utilize the same training data for past as well. So from 1990 to, let's say, 2024, every 5 years interval, even for every year also we can do similar kind of thing. Now that is why deep learning approach was being used in this case. So using same data. So here, for this present studies, it is important to generate a land use and land cover map of the recent year. Now the recent year is crucial for including different independent variables. As I mentioned, there are independent variables are let's say, or the variables rather, which are used for classification are three bands. Then there are spectral indices, as well as, like I have shown here, this texture also, as well as you have topographic variables. Now, to generate the LULC map, here random forest, which is a machine learning based approach, was used. Subsequently, the outcomes generated by this algorithm, that is random forest, were utilized for leveling the LULC categories. So here it is utilized for leveling the utilities. Why? Because I want to go back, or I want to do the classification of the past images as well with one-time training. Now here, so these are used again for leveling the land-use land cover categories, which are further utilized to train. So these were utilized to train the deep learning model, for time series LULC prediction. So for generating the each or the levels of each category, the classified image was was divided into patches of 64 pixels by 64 pixels. So first of all, you do classification and then use these levels to train the deep learning model to go here also classify, as well as you go back to previous years. Now in this study, so if I simplify the thing, first is dataset preparation. So dataset preparation was used in Python. So this was mentioned in earlier lectures as well. And the selected bands, of course, I have mentioned. Then there are indices which are also computed through Python. Then there is gray level coverage. Then generation of the so this is basically simplified form of this. So generation of levels for land use land cover classification, the recent land use land cover classification using a random forest classifier. Then classified images were divided into 64 by 64 pixels by 64 pixels patches. So there are a total of 1,200 image patches prepared, and levels of land use land or the land use land cover categories. These were used to train the deep learning model. So in general, what we do, we have the training site, we classify the image. If we have to go we have to do the previous years, or the, let's say, 5 years back, we use the same training sites actually to map. Or if there is no change in the thing, or if there is change, we just remove or modify those training sites. In this case, what we are doing is leveling the land use land cover categories, and these were used to train the deep learning model. So here the UNet model architecture was used, and this is used a 3x3 convolution matrix, and this also is connected to encoding as well as decoding parts with a concatenation layer. Here 13 input tensor layers, which I have mentioned, like bands, indices, and texture matrices are used, and then the training, validation, and testing was done, and then ultimately the predicted land use land cover of 1990 to 2023 was done. So basically, in this the UNet architect or the UNet model was used. So UNet model architecture basically utilizes a contracting path with a series of convolution layers, each followed by a rectified linear unit. This activation for feature extraction, and then these convolution layers are each typically of 3x3 size, which I have mentioned here in the second point. Here in the encoding pass, if you see here, the encoding pass basically, or you can rather say encoding phase and let's say decoding phase. So in the encoding phase, the image undergoes let us say here encoding and decoding. The encoding phase, the image undergoes successive convolution and downsampling, producing a compact and high-dimensional feature map. Whereas the decoding phase, the network expands this map to its original size through continuous convolution. and upscaling, ultimately yielding image segmentation results. Now, the intermediate section of the network, which is shown here, it is connected, or the intermediate section of the network connects the feature map of both the encoding as well as decoding phases through the concatenation layers. So this architecture was being used for classification. So classification of land use, land cover for from 1990 onwards. So every 5-year intervals from 1990 onwards, this thing was done. Now here, so then coming to the model accuracy. So as I mentioned earlier, also a collection of 1,200 around sub images or image patches with each patch of 64 by 64 pixels was employed for the training and validation of the neural networks. So out of this, let's say 1,200 images or images, there are 75% were allocated for the training, and the remaining 25% were used for validation. Out of the 25 images were then utilized for testing phase to evaluate the fitness of the CNNs before the practical. So you can see here the testing image, the levels, and as well as prediction of the test image. Now the accuracy, or the loss function, you can see here that here accuracy and validation accuracy. This graph derived from the training and testing images. So this so initially the training of the UNet model was done for using 20 epochs, which resulted in around 75% kind of accuracy, which further improved to approximately 84% after 100 epochs, and subsequently training for 1,000 epochs did not yield any significant increase in accuracy, maintaining at around 84%, 84.64. So in 100 epochs it is 84%, and in 1,000 epochs it is around 84.65% or so. So there is no significant increase in the accuracy. So the UNet model trained for the 100 epochs were chosen for further analysis due to its consistency, or the consistent accuracy performance. So the accuracy, the performance of the UNet model for image segmentation classification were evaluated also using some of the matrices. So these matrices are called precision, recall, accuracy, F1 score, then IOW, or you can say intersection over union. Now, if I talk of this key matrices, the precision basically indicates the proportion of true positive predictions among all positive predictions made by the model. A precision score of here is 0.82. This suggests that when the model predicts the positive segment, 82% of the time it is correct. Whereas a recall measures the proportion of the true positive predictions among all actual positive segments. Here the recall score of, let's say, 0.79. This indicates that the model identifies 79% of the actual positive segments. Accuracy basically is a measure of the overall correctness. This indicating the proportion of all correctness out of the all predictions made. So an accuracy of 84% indicates that the model correctly predicts 84% of the segments, which reflects basically a relatively high overall accuracy. The F1 score basically is a harmonic mean of precision and recall. This provides it is basically a single metric that balances between the two. An F1 score of 0.81. This indicates that the model maintains a good balance between precision and recall. This indicates an effective overall performance in the context of image segmentation. Whereas IOU, or the intersection over union, this is also called Jacquard index. This measures basically the overlap between predicted and the ground truth segments divided by the union of these two. So an IOU segment of or a score of 0.68, basically this suggests there is a significant overlap between the predicted and actual segments. Now, in this study, basically, you can see we could generate five. We actually generated 5 classes because it was based on the objective driven, because the objective was to study the deforestation monitoring. So 5 classes were mapped. River and semi-marine forest, river and forest, dry river bed settlement, water body, and cropland or fallow land. Now, if you see the classification of forest here, it stands for around 80% semi-marine forest here. Selection, and if you see the other as well, overall accuracy as well as the producer user accuracy, you can see the each classes. So overall, you can say it can be said that this that selection of the images that have undergone classification by the this thing have generated a quite a comprehensive result or satisfied level of accuracy that we can achieve through this kind of model. Now, when I you can see the maps. So this is the different classes and accuracy. This is the maps generated of each year. So the first one is 1990, then 5-year intervals. So we are doing like say 95, 2000, 2005, 10, 20, 15, 20, 24. Yes. So basically we trained the model in 2024, and then based on those levels, as I mentioned, there are 1,200 images of 64 by 64 patches. And then these were the each category was labeled, and this is used in the deep learning model to map the other as well. Different from 1990 to let's say recent years, every 5-year interval this was done. So if I see this map in a close view, now you can see how the deforestation have taken place in this area. The green color basically represent the forest area from with the duration of from 1990 to 2024. The area has lost this much of and moreover, whatever I'm showing, these are part of 8 reserve forest, 1 national park, and 1 wildlife sanctuary in this. Now, and this is a very important elephant habitat as well, or the elephant corridor, part of an elephant corridor. Now, if we see area wise, what information we have we got is, so the forest area in the study area was initially in 1990 it was around 1,000 or let's say 1,100 square kilometer. It is reduced to 460 square kilometer. So there's continuous reduction, continuous removal of forest or continuous reduction in the large scale deforestation in this area. And deep learning facilitated us to do this study in a comprehensive manner, in a quickly in an efficient manner as well. Over the recent 2020 to 2024, we have observed that there is a slightly increase in forest area, mainly in the Marine National Park. So because of conservation efforts and all. If you see by the area lost, so basically if I from 1919 or 2024, so there is a loss of 582 square kilometer of the area, which is basically it is twice the area of geographical area of Maldives, and it can accommodate, let's say, around 1 lakh football fields. So this much area of forest has been lost from a biodiversity hotspot, with an annual deforestation rate of 2.24%. So this is the rate of deforestation, which is very high. And so far as the protected areas are concerned, the reserve forest, wildlife sanctuary, national parks in this area is concerned, we have observed in Chartduar, reserve forest experience the highest deforestation or the highest loss of forest, wherein an area of Earlier it was 129 square kilometer. Now it has gone down to 3 square kilometer only. So it's an annual deforestation rate of 7.61%, which is very high. Similarly, the Sonarupai Wildlife Sanctuary, this also have faced a high rate of annual deforestation. So you can see from all these red things change. So basically loss in area in all this. So annual deforestation rate is also quite high. So to conclude, I must say that here the study basically is an effective use of advanced technology in forest deforestation monitoring, and I tried to explain why we have used deep learning for deforestation monitoring and all. So it's not only deep learning here. One more thing is like the freely accessibility of long-term satellite data, or rather availability of the long-term satellite data, which facilitate us to use this kind of algorithm, which was explained in the first lecture. The utility, the availability of different satellite data. Our work is basically concentrated on how use this kind of techniques in this domain, remote sensing domain. So this not only deep learning, the availability of long-term satellite data also presents a significant opportunity for monitoring large-scale deforestation. This advancement, actually, these are crucial for better understanding and managing the forest carbon stock depletion. So the loss of forest, which I have shown using deep learning, can be used. This can be further studied to assess the loss of carbon due to deforestation in this area. Loss of carbon or the dynamics of carbon, forest carbon due to deforestation in this area. So here you have observed that is only forest carbon loss. So basically it will also lead to forest carbon loss as well as biodiversity loss in these areas. So this advancement can it can be used for developing effective strategies for mitigate implications in deforestation forest ecosystem. The technological improvements and insight which are gained from this study can be very important in advancing environmental monitoring and conservation. One small recommendation can be in this study, since we have used 1984 to 2024, but Landsat data is available from 1972 onwards. So basically you have a more than 50 years data available, but because the first thing is I used Landsat TM, ETM plus, OLI, like that. MSS data I have not used. So if somebody can someone can work on the harmonization of satellite data from, let's say, Landsat series, harmonization of Landsat series. So it's a huge data set, and from 50 years data set, and then use deep learning method, of course to address the area which is very complex, very dynamics. It will give a better estimation or better assessment of how much forest is lost or gained over the area. So this is all from my side. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Dr. Nandi. And now we have the next speakers, Shri A.K. Jha. I think he is online. So I request you to kindly upload your presentation and you start your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Atyen. I'll just start it with sharing the presentations.
Okay.
we need to do some kind of classifications and other method has to be applied, and based on that again it has to be put into a mobile application. So I'll just talk about how we did it, and if somebody wants to build a mobile based application, so what are the different workflows which needs to be followed. So basic objective of this whole work was, there are two parts of it. So one part was basically we are trying to use the deep learning methods to basically identify different species. So it's basically related to three major species, I should say. We haven't taken all the species which is currently available, but within the Animalia kingdom, we are going to take only the three different species. So I'll just talk about all of them at later stages. Then we have used the CNN architecture, especially the AlexNets, and there are also a lot of currently available newer architectures that can also be tried, and it can be extended. That work can be done. So that work is still under progress. Then later on, what we did is we then specifically tried to put all these models in an operational mode for development of mobile-based applications, specifically for butterflies. So these butterfly data sets were there. So what we did is we just tried to create a butterfly identifications models, and then later on we are going to put it into a certain conversion process has to be carried out so that the same models can be then put into a mobile platform. So that we have used it for one of our projects called basically the butterflies identifications and required for IBM based data sets. So basic objective is that can we use the different species present in the can we use the different DNN or CNN models which is available. So in this case, basically we targeted the visual features which is possible to extract from the images, and we try to only focus on the identification of the visual features which can be used for identification of identification of different species. That's what we are trying to do it under this, so that this can be used at later stage, maybe tagging. So we can do a kind of crowd-based data collections, and that can be used, and tagged can be used, which can be further studies in ecological studies like abundance of different species in a different zone. So that can be carried out once we have such data sets collections and annotations method available. So we use basically the study area is Uttarakhand, where we try to do some kind of a small experiment on that. And we had used the data sets. So some of the data sets which is publicly available from the iNaturalist. So the platform provides the different species and images which has been collected from different enthusiasts, and it's a kind of crowd based data collection platforms, specifically for the species or different species. So we have used that data sets which they have provided for the projects. Then we had also our own Indian Bioresource Information Network, so that has a few set of data sets available and collected under various projects. So based on that, we have used that. Then with iButterfly is another example in the areas which provides the lot of information related to butterflies. So for the butterfly, we have used IBN and as well as the Indian iButterfly portal, which is available for Indian sets. So to identify the species, especially the three different groups, which are basically apes, and then we are having Animalia and Protozoa. So we have targeted initially the 9 classes under the apes. So under that, as we can see, the different different species, which we have under these modeling architectures. So in this case, the basic selection of this species was based on the unique representations. For example, each of these species has a very unique representations of their beak, the overall structures, especially the shapes, and correspondingly the different layers of the, I should say, wings which is present. So based on that, this species can be easily differentiated from one another. So considering this visual appearance, we have selected this 9 classes. Same was also in the cases of Animalia. We have selected 5 different classes, which was basically again specifically to the shape dependent. So some of them are having a very specific and natural shapes, and as well as sub-components within each of those representations. Like we are having a jellyfish, or we are having a starfish. So those kind of fish actually have a very specific and unique shape that can be utilized for classifications. So in the previous case, we are using shape and as well as textures and other things. In this case, we are going to exploit the properties of the shapes and their distributions. And the protozoa is actually the species which will have a very small amount of repetitive patterns present in the images, and that can be used for classification. So we have built a small model of this, and then we are also used and shown and demonstrated the uses of all these classes for the classifications. The other things, or other areas which we have worked on is the butterfly cases. So currently we have targeted around 22 different classes of butterflies. So these are being listed on the screen. So based on the availability of their data and the abundance in the different region of the Uttarakhand, we have selected these data sets. These are available from the IBM source and as well as the iButterfly that we have used it for the classifications. So what we did is, like as the previous speaker has talked about, that there are different machine learning algorithms are there. So he made the things look quite simpler, but there are a lot of different tuning parameters has to be done, especially in the unit models which he had discussed. It requires a lot of hyperparameters, then selection of the proper, basically the prediction accuracies and so on that can be used for extraction of specific information. Generally, if there are multiple confusion of the classes, then what we have to take is we have to take top 2 or top 5 different scores, and those scores can also be represented for representations in this case. So in this case, the methodologies are very simple. Like you take a data set which is available, and each of the data sets is labeled against. So means you're having one particular image, and there is corresponding label for that particular image based on their species. Then we are doing a training on CNN networks. So in those cases, in this case, what we have done is we have taken a few AlexNets and we have built certain layers on the top of it, so that the head can be matched as the number of classes which we required. And based on that, we have retrained the whole models, and that models gets generated with 50 and 100 epochs. We have seen that if there's no higher divergence between the validations and the testing data sets, so as soon as the divergence increases, we stop at that point, and then we take the data sets, the model generated for final representations, which after doing an accuracy assessment, we convert them into a mobile-based, basically compatible platforms, and that we can then import it into a different mobile applications, and then we can store it based on the informations can be put in the mobile applications, and then later on, based on those data sets, we can generate the new data set, and finally that can be posted onto the portal for collections and further validations and studies. So this is just an example of different image and corresponding labeling patterns. So the simplest of the labeling pattern is called an one-hot encoding. So in this case, what you do is, as many number of head you have to create the that should be the length of the vectors which has to be created, and based on that, the availability of the locations, the corresponding class is being labeled. For example, in this case, we are seeing that this vector layer is having 3 different entries. The first entry represents the Acropora palmate. So that's the first class which we are putting it. Similarly, second column represents the second species, which is Cynia capillata. So these kind of labeling in hard encodings is being created, and which generally can be put into CNN and DNN models. We have followed and we have used the basic core architecture of the TensorFlow. The reason for that was that it is easier to be imported into a mobile-based devices. So what we can do is we can train a model, and then that model can be converted into mobile-compatible models. So as you can see that generally these models will be quite huge. So there has to be a lot of pre-process, the post-processing has to be done so that it can be tuned without decreasing the large amount of basically the outcome, and that conversion has to be carried out with the help of TensorFlow Lite, and we use that conversion models, do some kind of optimization, especially the weight compressions and those techniques is being applied so that this can be put into a mobile devices. So this is simple architectures, which is the 7-layer hidden layers, which is customarily, which has been created specifically for the species identifications. So there are a lot of convolutions layers and max pool layers. So I think from the previous lectures, which was quite clear that what are those, the objective of those classes. At the end, we are going to have a fully connected layer, which is as per the number of classes. So based on the number of classes we had, we are having an output connector or the fully connected layers that has been provided, which can be used for training and classifications that has been used. So for the CNN model, which we have seen, or multiple layers which we have done, we have to create a bounding box model. So in this case, we are targeting a specific zone of the images. So in an images, they may be having a multiple species, or some of them may be a foreground or background features. So we have to give a very specific areas that gets created in a form of bounding boxes. And then finally, when these bounding box is made available, then we do the CNN model, which has been explained earlier, to do a validations and accuracies corrections. So generally, in this case, we are using a gradient descent-based descent algorithms, and the ReLU architecture has been basically has been used for different activation functions. We have tried a lot of other activation functions but the ReLU comes out to be the best representation of the data set which we had. So once we build this, then finally testing of the features has been done. There's a standard process like 80-20 data sets, and that should be the distribution between training and testing data sets. So we use that, and that has created a kind of final models. So once we have that, the identification of those models, then we convert them into a TF Lite, which gets exported into mobile platforms. And then we do a mobile application development using that basically a TensorFlow model, or the training model which is available to us, which when we integrate it with the different geolocations and the corresponding image data collections, that can be through camera or maybe through your galleries, and then top 3 predictions is being represented to the users, and later on that gets stored in your mobile phone, and if you want, that can also be shared to the central platform. So this is basically, it can work in offline mode, where the user can go on the field, collect the data sets, and later on it can be uploaded onto the mobile platforms. There are also the other development which was going on for the iOS apps, and that is still under the development stages. So these are the few steps or the examples of, because in most of these data sets, especially the species data sets, whenever we take, the publicly available data sets are very small or limited. So what we have to look for is we have to do some kind of data augmentation, especially to take care of the orientations and other cases. So those of data augmentation technique has been applied, and later on, as we see that there is a large divergence between validations and training data sets, we stop it at that location. So in the first case, as you see that the model accuracy which we are seeing before image augmentations, which was quite low, But as we have applied the different augmentation techniques, the accuracy is going high for both training and validations techniques. So the overall species, when you do such kind of augmentation, when you apply the augmentations onto the different images, then it has found to be around 15 to 20% improvement minimum in accuracies, which we can get it, and that can be that can help you to get a better trained model for the applications. So these are the few plots for the different model accuracies. So the best part of these graphs is that generally whenever any models is being created, there will be a large divergence between training and validations. So if you want to have your model, if you want to make sure that you are training an appropriate models, you have to make sure that there is an appropriate divergence which is being maintained, and there should not be a larger divergence as your epoch is going to increase. So in this case, we are seeing a very good stability even for the larger epochs. So we have gone for up to 500 epochs, and as you can see, between the training and validations accuracies, it has been quite consistent, and in fact in some cases it is exactly matching between the validations and training accuracies. So this shows that the overall models which is actually being trained actually is going to perform well on the ground itself. So let's take an example of how these models are actually doing in species identifications. So this is just an example of a simple image of an picture of which has been taken from the testing data sets. And as you can see, there are multiple layers which is available in your networks or in the convolution networks. So in this case, at the final layer, as you can see, the first layer output itself, you can see there is a quite basically I should say that there's a quite differences between the foreground and background area. So as you can see in the right hand side, the second images which basically suppresses the background images and the foreground images, and all the features of this the bird, like beak, their final representation of the basically wings, those patterns are actually getting quite beautifully captured on the output layer of the first hidden layer. So what we do, we use such multiple layers at different convolution stages. So as you can see, as you move away, see basically the texture patterns are also getting enhanced. Then there are specific zones in the images. For example, in this for this particular bird, we can see that in the second and third, the differences or the brightness which was there at near the beak in the neck regions, that has also been highlighted. So these kind of specific features gets highlighted in each of these layers, which actually helps us to create a specific classification at later stages. So these stages is being created, so there is a continuous improvement of the overall representation. In fact, if you look into the details, at some of these images quite remarkably distinguishes the beak portions, or there are other cases like the outer bodies portion, the shape of the bodies that can be put into each of these layers. So such layers has been put into that CNN model. So each of these different layers output has been created. Based on that, each of these features or very specific class features gets highlighted on the final output layer, which helps us to distinguish different classes. So this is just a simple execution of a class of a specific images. So that's how these different CNN models is going to give you a species-specific features which can be used for classifications. So based on that, we have used these classifications, and correspondingly the different prediction output for a specific images has been shown in this case. And it ought to be like, we can see that since there are specific features, for example, in case of peacocks and so on, we are seeing around 90+ accuracy is being achieved. And in the specifically, since out of all these the different groups which we have tried to do it, like different species for protozoa, butterfly, animalia, apes, and so on, apes are very distinct and their characteristics are quite visible in the different images. So accordingly, their accuracies are also being quite high. We have also seen that in few cases where there are smaller species or combinations of multiple species due to non-proper labeling, even in those cases also the accuracy has not gone very down. As you can see in the at the bottom side, you can see the snow owl is there. So this snow owl is having a very lesser distinctions between the foreground and background cases. In those cases also the accuracy has been quite good based on the feature presentations. Even though the features like beaks are not quite dominant, is not quite dominantly seen in these cases, but still we are able to get a very good accuracies, and that accuracy is being shown. So these are basically the prediction accuracies. So it identifies such ape species quite well. In case of protozoa, as you can see that these are generally found in a colonies on a group. So that is the added advantages for identification of these species. So we can find out multiple colonies within labeled images, and which we can distinguish and which you can show it in the, or which can be exploited for image-based classifications of specifically for the protozoas. Same we did it for butterfly. So in the butterfly there are different shapes and the multiple characteristics, like we can have different shapes of the basically the wings. Within the wing there are a lot of different patterns, so that these very visible distinct features can be exploited for classification. And in this case, as you can see, out of those 22 classes which we have targeted, we have found out very good accuracy as well. Then in animalia domain, especially in the cases where we are having a very distinct features, their accuracy is quite high, as you can see in this starfish cases, which is quite focused, which we can see in these groups, and it is available. The other cases also, the overall representation is quite good. As you can see this in the bottom side, the starfish is what you're seeing it in this case is also having a lesser accuracies, because there is a confusion between this and corresponding protozoa classes. But overall, if I take the top three representation, still the distinction of the features like the shape is giving the higher rate, and based on that we can do it. So this shows that the classifications whenever we carry out in the basically in any kind of AI based systems, we do not only rely on the prediction accuracy, but also relies on the ranking of these different classes, and that can be used for the representations of these maps. So these are basically few of the examples which we have, which is being generated for the different species. Similar kind of things we have already done for the development of butterflies. As you can see, that in this case, the butterfly species which has been identified and labeled, so we can provide the images capturing methods. So as soon as you image that, as soon as you capture the images, there are two options that you simply do a predictions, and based on your resources and a mobile phone, it gives the category or the ranking of each of those species which has been collected in this region. So as you can see, this gives the three different species. The top two is having around 40 and 45 and 40% prediction accuracies. That's was telling. So it's basically probability which is giving. So top three probability is being represented, and finally this represented data set, when it gets validated at the end users, can be pushed to the databases, where when it gets collected, then we can use it for the species abundance measurements, and their further the categorizations can be carried out. So with this, in this studies, basically we have used the method called CNN models, and specifically based on the TensorFlow architecture or TensorFlow framework. We are also seeing that in this case, The TensorFlow architecture provides a very good results within 200 to 300 milliseconds within the mobile phone, which is quite good, and which can be used for immediate field capture and corresponding validations. And then the datasets can be used for classifying, automatic classification of the different dataset which gets collected from different crowdsourced platforms, and then later on which can be properly categorized for better cataloging systems, which can be further used for different species abundance and other studies that can be carried out. So we are having a few recommendations if some of you are interested to carry forward this. So we are currently working on to increase this number of species, especially in the butterfly cases, from 22 to 44 classes. So we are experimenting with it, and then we would also like to collaborate and work on those areas. If some of you are interested, that can be used. So this is basically the small case studies and the corresponding application which has been built for the based using the ANN and CNN models, which can help us to create the field data collections, and that data, especially the species data collections, which can be used for further for better taxonomy and classifications. Data sets can be created based on such systems. So with this, I'll be ending my sessions here. Thank you for your kind attentions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your talk. Now I invite Shri Ravi Bhandari, sir, for his talk on exposure to processing of ecological data with deep learning. Over to you, sir.
To you all, and sorry for the interruption. So my topic is I will just giving you a brief demo on how do we do basic ecological data processing. Like the demonstration I will be using, I will be showing you how do we do a simple land cover classification using some using Sentinel-2 data. So the model which I will be showing will be just a toy model, you can say. It will be just for you to get started. It will help you in getting started with a deep learning. So the code, whatever I will be showing here, is just for demonstration purpose. It will not be the most efficient and the best way to do that kind of processing, but it will just help you to get started with. So before going to the demonstration, I will be, anyway, my previous speakers have covered in detail where all deep learning can be used for ecological data processing. So few of these applications I have taken, like suppose if you wish to count how many trees are there in a forest, right? So doing it manually is quite difficult. So if you train a deep learning model for that, then this task can be done quite easily. I think this is a model developed by some University of Copenhagen. They have developed a model based on CNN architectures for counting number of trees in a forest. So if you do it using deep learning, that becomes quite easy. Then the second application, like you may be interested in field segmentation. Like suppose if you want to identify from the satellite images all individual fields from a satellite image, so that you can delineate fields individually, right? So the same thing, this also can be done using deep learning. So this is the output from a model by some university. They have used Meta's segment anything model for doing the segmentation. And one of the most prominent right, so this is one of the good applications of deep learning for ecological data application. And this is how we go about building a model, right? So first thing we need to take your area of interest, like the area where you are interested in, an area which you want to classify. So for that, first we need to take some training samples, right? So where so this is how do we start with, like suppose first I need to take maybe I need to take some points, different land covers. Maybe I take a reference map, or I just find these features manually on a satellite image. So then, like here, we have to take multiple land cover types, maybe water or built up or forested area or barren land or anything, right? So in the second case, then we need to take a satellite image based on which we we want to make the classified map or say land cover map, right? So depending on how many bands are available on our image, then for all those bands, so it's like, so first we need to create a table like this. So for all these points which we have identified maybe on our reference map, or like we have identified, marked these different land cover types manually on a satellite image, then we need to take pixel values in all these bands corresponding to these land covers and create a table like this. This general deep learning is uses a type of learning called supervised classification. In supervised classification, we need to have data plus their associated labels, right? So in the similar case, now we have here you can say that we have collected or identified say 4 different land cover types, and we have collected the their reflectance values at these pixels in all the different bands for the image for the image which we want to classify, and we have associated a label also to that pixel, like this particular pixel is a built-up pixel, or this is a water body, or this is a forested pixel. So first, before building a model, first we need to create the training data for training our model, right? So this is how do we create a training data. Like we first need to identify different land cover types and create a table like this on for every pixels, or depending on what kind of model you are developing. So right now I'll be demonstrating you a model which is just based on a single pixel. So the classification will be done based on the values of a single pixel. Right. So here we are. So we just collect all what are the reflectance values for that land cover type in all different bands. Then attach and next a new column to that data, like what is the class of that land cover. Right. So this will be how we'll be doing. So in the training data, we will first select a few samples from our image, like different land cover types. So on these land cover, so this will be our training data. So this training data we can divide into say two parts: the training samples and the testing samples. So we will train our model on these training model, and on the test data we will see how the model performs. So testing data will be completely new data for the model. So if the model is doing good on the testing data, then we can confidently say that the model will do good even the real life scenarios. So this will be like we will select few samples, and then to our model we will give the entire image as an input and get the classified map for this particular image. So the most difficult task of doing supervised learning is creating these labeled data. So that is one of the most difficult tasks. For that you need expertise of for image interpretation, or maybe domain knowledge as well is required, and domain knowledge is also required for doing this labeling of the data. So once this is done, then once you see that your model is performing to the accepted level on the testing data, then the model can be used for classifying the entire image as well. So anyway, in this deep learning has been covered in detail by the previous speakers as well. So deep learning usually refers to a machine learning algorithm that is based on the neural networks with multiple layers. So there are multiple neurons that are connected to each other using the weights and biases. So the intelligence is all about learning those weights and biases so that we get the correct output for a given input. So that's intelligence is all about finding how do we find these weights and biases so that we get a correct output corresponding to the given input. So this is a general deep learning model's life cycle. You can say first we need to collect the training data, right? So in the training data we build a model. So like our training data we may divide into two parts, say training and testing. Then we build our model and train our model on the training data, then see the performance of the model on the test data or evaluation data. Then once we see that, then even actually we can use another type of data set, that what we call validation data set. So while training, we can just, as we are training our model, we can validate the results of our or test the model on validation data as well. So depending on the results on the validation data, we can fine tune our model, and thus this cycle goes on. So once we see that the model has reached to accepted level of accuracy on the training and validation data set, then we can evaluate the model on the testing data set. Right. So then finally, once it is done, then we can use the model for prediction. So these are the different deep learning frameworks, or what you can say the most popular deep learning frameworks where you can build these deep neural networks. So one of these is Keras or TensorFlow. These are built together. Then what I will be demonstrating today is PyTorch. So I'll be using PyTorch for my demonstration. Then other models are scikit-learn, TensorFlow. These are the most popular frameworks for deep learning and machine learning. So PyTorch is an open source deep learning framework developed by Meta AI, and this is now part of Linux Foundation as well. It is widely used for applications in computer vision, natural language processing, and all kinds of applications where deep learning can be used. So PyTorch can be used everywhere. So these are the key features of the PyTorch. It uses dynamic computational graphs that allows for flexible and efficient model building. Then PyTorch is quite easy to use if you are comfortable using Python programming language. The syntax of PyTorch is quite Pythonic in nature. And it's intuitive for Python developers. It has a robust ecosystem that includes tools like Torch Vision. So if you are interested in doing computer vision kind of applications, and Torch text or Torch audio for different tasks, then it supports distributed training as well. Like if you have large data set and you want to train your model on, say, different GPUs which are distributed across the network, so then it supports distributed training as well. With this just basic introduction to the PyTorch and deep learning, now I will go to the demonstration. So these are the contents for these slides, and the code which I will be demonstrating I have taken from the Google Earth Engine. So if you wish to take that, is available on Google Earth Engine. Also, you can refer to the link given here. And so for this demonstration, I am making certain assumptions. I am assuming that you already have some basic idea about programming, and specifically about Python programming language, and you know about this Google Colab and other things. Are because I'm using Google Colab for my demonstration. I'm assuming that you know about Jupyter Notebook and other things. Plus, you have some basic idea about remote sensing remote sensing data as well, right? So for this land cover classification using Sentinel-2 data, so the reference map I have used is European Space Agency's World Cover 2022-2020 product. So that provides a global land cover map for year 2022 at 10-meter resolution. So the this World Cover map is based on the Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 data combined. So they have classified the land covers in 11 different classes, right? So now we will try to do similar thing, but the accuracy of the model which I will be demonstrating here will not be as good as what the ESA World Cover produces, but that is maybe good for you to get started with. So what we will try to classify the Sentinel-2 image. So I have taken the Sentinel-2 Sentinel-2 image surface reflectance map, actually you can say specifically. So we'll try to classify the image in the following classes. We will tree cover, shrubland, grassland, cropland, built up, and water bodies, and into these 11 classes. So for data, I have taken Sentinel-2 data. So Sentinel-2 is a wide swath, high resolution, multispectral imaging mission that is launched as a part of Copernicus land monitoring. So it supports monitoring of vegetation, soil, water cover, as well as observations of inland and waterways plus coastal areas. So these are the bands available on the surface reflectance or product. So B1 is aerosol, then blue, green, red edge. So for this demonstration, I will just be taking the blue, green, red, NIR and SWIR 1 and SWIR 2 bands. So I'll be taking just these 6 bands for classification. So the study area, what I have taken is the Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. Actually, there is no specific technical reason for selecting this area. Because I was going through the map and I found that Visakhapatnam has a lot of different type of land covers, and the image was also looking quite good. So that was just that was the compelling reason for me to choose Visakhapatnam as the area of interest for this demonstration. Right. So as I explained that, because this deep learning is all about a supervised learning. So I have prepared the data manually, like I have selected different land cover types on this area of interest and created a table like as I showed in my presentation. Right. So then all that data I have loaded in my Google Drive. So these are all basic imports for starting this. So because as I said that we'll be using pandas because I have stored the training data in a CSV file that lists like the reflectance values in different bands for that land cover type and what is the type of land cover available there. Then as we said that I will be using PyTorch. So PyTorch is available using these in these modules. So if you use Google Colab, so PyTorch or TensorFlow comes pre-installed in the Google Colab. And if you wish to use your local system, then you need to install all these libraries to your system, right? And plus I'm using this sklearn or scikit-learn as well for splitting my data into training and testing data sets. But so before starting, I have defined some constant values like bands. So in my training data, I have collected these bands: blue, green, red, NIR, SWIR 1, and SWIR 2. Plus, actually, for the model, we will be using a CNN model. So, two-dimensional CNN model. So, generally, CNN model, but our classification is based on a single model. Based on a single pixel. So, every single pixel we will be reshaping it as an image of 1 cross 1, right? So, because I'm using 2D convolution model for land classification. So, but the classification is based on the single pixel. So, single pixel value, I will be reshaping it to say a two-dimensional image of size 1 cross 1, right? Because this is a single pixel. Then these are some hyperparameters for the model, say batch size, learning rate, and other things that you can change as you learn. Then I have defined the output class in my data to be land cover type. So actually my training data I have stored in a file called Wisec sample data.csv. Now suppose if I read this file, I've read this using Panda. So now if I see this df.head or I say df, so here you can see, as I explained that first before going into the model implementation, first we need to create the training data. So I have created the training data like this. You can say that. So I have collected this almost some around 8,000 training samples. Right. So like here you can say that pixel 0, whatever training sample 0 in my training sample 0, that has in blue, the reflectance value is 0.05, green 0.07, red this, NIR this, and SWIR this. And this land cover is of type say 10. So 10 means if you see the table of classification table, so 10 say this will be tree cover type. And like this, I have created a table collecting all samples from all classes in which I want to classify my image. So the basic requirement is that before building a model, our training data should be balanced, right? Suppose if I am taking n number of samples, then in my training data set, all the samples should be there should be equal number of samples from each class. So that I have tried to ensure. So I'm just first dividing it by 10. So now if I inspect the training data, say land cover dot value count, it says that land cover 1 I have 1,000, land cover 2 I have 1,000 samples. So for all classes in which I want to classify the input image have all 1,000 samples. Right, so I can say that my training data is quite balanced. And totally there are say 8,000 samples in my total test data set. So now for building the model, we need to split our data set to the training and testing, right? So in the training part, so we will train our model on the training data set and see the performance of the model on the test data set. So these are some standard numbers generally people use. So whatever data you have available, 70% of that use for the training and remaining 30% for the for testing purpose, right? So here I am calling the train and test split function of scikit-learn, so that splits my training data into the 70% for the training and 30% for the test. So then now I'm creating two data frames, one training and one test. So with this piece of code, we are creating two test data sets. Now if we see their sizes, if we see, So now in the training data set, we have, so there were totally 8,000 samples. Out of these 8,000 samples, 5,600 will be used for training, and remaining 2,400 are used for test. So in deep learning parlance, all these features are represented as vectors, or vectors called tensors. Right. So till now, these are not. So whatever training data we have is not in the form of tensor. So first, before ingesting this data to the model, we need to convert these numerical values to something called tensor. So tensors are nothing but are n-dimensional vectors that are used in deep learning. Right. So first, I'm converting these to the tensors using torch has a function called torch.tensor. So that takes as input a NumPy array and converts it to a tensor. So now I have features what you call that deflectance in different bands, whatever we have selected, and we are converting to tensor. And the target is our land cover class. So torch.tensor in output class I have taken as target. So now with this piece of code, I will just convert them to the tensor. So if I see the features here, now say so you can say that this is a tensor of this particular shape. Now, as I said that for ingesting this data to a two-dimensional convolution network, as I said that every pixel we need to convert to an image of size 1 cross 1, and because there are 6 bands, so finally we'll convert into 6 cross 1 cross 1. So before proceeding or ingesting this data to the model, we need to reshape our data so that it can be ingested into the model. So for reshaping the data to the required format, there is a function available in the PyTorch that what we call torch.reshape. So with that, we reshape this entire feature array to the shape required by the model. So similar way, I am reshaping the targets also to the shape required by the model. Now you can say that the shape is 5600 cross 6 cross 1 cross 1. So there are totally, as we said, that there were 5,600 training samples available to us, and every pixel is represented as a 1 cross 1 image of 6 bands, and the target is represented as single image of 1 cross 1, and there are totally 5,600 images. Then for handling the data, actually we need to break the data into the mini batches. Actually, that during training the model, so the model learns about these weights and biases using an algorithm called SGD, or stochastic gradient descent. Right. So for now, because this is the entire training data set, so now for first we need to load these lead tensor into the data loader, which makes it easier to batch and shuffle the data for training. So because during training we train the during training we train every poke we update the weights and biases after every batch, mini batch, right? So these data loaders help us in batching and shuffling the entire training data, right? So tensor, first I'm converting this tensor into a tensor data set, like this is reshaped date feature and targets. Then using data loader, we are making mini batches of these data and shuffling these data for training. So with the train loader, makes the batches of these data plus shuffles these batches together so that the data goes in different order to the model in different epochs during the training. So now next step comes, how do we define our model, right? So this is how do we define a different a classification model. So here, because PyTorch takes approach called, first we need to inherit or extend the nn.module package. So I have defined a class called classification model that inherits or extends, say, nn.module class available in the PyTorch. And here I have defined two convolution layers one nn dot with nn dot convolution con 2D and second nn dot con 2D. So as I said that first in because our image has 6 number of bands, so in channels are length of bands because our image has 6 bands. Then the first channel produces 15 feature maps. Right. So first, as explained in the previous lecture, like every convolution neural network will produce feature maps. Right. So the first convolution layer here is taking as input 6 cross 1 cross 1 image, and it is producing from that single pixel 15 feature maps. And the kernel size is 1 cross 1. And after that, there is another convolution layer that takes output from these layers, because the first layer has produced 15 feature maps. So the input to the second convolution layers are those 15 feature maps, and it produces 11 classes because we wanted to classify the pixels into 11 classes. So here the output channels are 11, and the kernel size here also is 1 because our image size itself is 1 cross 1. So the kernel size also we have taken 1 cross 1. But if your image size is larger, say 64 cross 64 or maybe 32 cross 34, in that case you can change the kernel size, maybe 3 cross 3 or 5 cross 5, whatever you wish to use. Then in our neural network, there are 2 convolution networks, and there is a dropout layer for regularization. And finally, there is a softmax layer, so that produces the probability of being in that particular class. Right? So this is finally will produce the probability of that particular pixel falling into any of these classes. So it will produce the probability of falling into any of these 11 classes. So in the classification model, then we need to specify the forward function. So the forward function is which is called automatically by the PyTorch while training, right? So whatever input data we give to the model. So first it passes to the convolution layer, then the output is produced, then that output is again saved to the X. Then there is, after convolution, there is a ReLU activation function. So after ReLU, there is a dropout layer. Then after dropout, the output of dropout goes to the second convolution layer. Then the output of second convolution goes to the softmax layer, which produces the probability of that the output to be in any of these 11 classes. So this is how do we define our model, right? So this we have created a class in that there are 2 convolution layer, 1 dropout layer, and output is a softmax layer. Then we instantiate this classification model, and these 2 things we need to specify. One is called the loss function. So loss function means this is the function which measures the difference between the output produced by the model and the actual model. So the purpose of training is to reduce this difference between, like suppose if I have given an input to a model, then the model produces certain output, right? But I know actual output, what should be for that input. So loss is the difference between output produced by the model and the actual output model. So the purpose of training the model is how do we adjust the weights and biases to reduce this loss. So there are different kinds of losses. So for this particular purpose, because this is a multi-class classification, we are using a cross entropy loss, right? And we need to define the optimizer. So here we are using Adam optimizer or the Adam optimizer. So optimizer is the module which adjusts the weights and biases. So how the weights and biases to be adjusted, that decision is taken by the optimizer. Then to optimizer, we need to specify the parameters of the model and the learning rate. So this builds a model and the optimizer. Then we need to train our model. So for that, we need to specify the training loop, right? So suppose this is the number of epochs. So like suppose if you wish to train our model, maybe we may say 5, 10, or 20 number of epochs. So in the every epoch, the model will be trained on all mini batches of our entire training set, right? So because our train loader has broken our training data or batched our data into mini batches. So this is an iterator. So suppose if you iterate over the train loader, it gives the batch of inputs plus as well as target. right? So this is how our training loop is. So in the train loader gives us back our actual targets and the inputs data. So through the model, and we have created a class model in the classification model. So to the model in every epoch, we are giving the inputs, right? So whatever input feature vector is given as input to the model, and this model produces some output, right? So the output is stored in the variable called output. Then we need to check the difference or calculate the loss value of the loss, like that we have called the criteria loss function as criteria. So criteria we have given as input as our output produced by the model and the actual target. So the difference between two we are calculating and calling that as the loss function. So the purpose of training the model is to adjust the weights and biases such that this loss gets minimized over the epochs. Right. So once this will be done for a single training batch, then we need to zero the gradients, and this loss dot backward, this modifies the weights and biases for after that batch function. Then we need to call optimizer dot step function to do that. Then after every second epoch, we are printing the loss. So we say that the purpose of training is that model should learn these weights and biases to reduce the loss, like to reduce the difference between the input, the difference between the output produced by the model and the actual output. Now, if I run the model, you can say that, so the loss is slightly getting reduced over the every epoch. So we can say that the model is getting trained. So actually this is a toy model, so the model may not perform quite well, or the loss may not reduce drastically, but as you can say that the over the epochs, the loss, so the weights and biases are getting adjusted such that model is able to produce the correct output. So you can say that after so after 50 epochs, the loss value had reduced to 1.97 when we started with 2.36. So you can say that model has learned something about the features, may not quite good. So once the model is trained, now suppose if you wish to verify the performance of the model on your testing data. So now similar way we need to convert our testing data also to the format in which the model can ingest. So now same thing I have done, whatever I have done for the training data set, same thing I am doing for the testing as well. So once the data is formatted to that, so first thing you need to call on the model is model.eval. So when you are training the model, in that case you need not to call eval, because in that case, in case of evaluation, the weights and biases doesn't get updated, need not to be updated. So we need to call model.eval, and that with torch dot with no grade. So here then we need to give to our model our input testing features, and that it produces our test outputs. Then we can calculate the loss, like the criteria. Well, we know actually what the predictions for those input features, and then we can compare the difference between the test predictions and the predictions produced by the model. And then finally, we can calculate the accuracy of our model by seeing, because you know actual outputs and the output produced by the model. Then if we compare them with equality operator, then we can say that this is the accuracy of our model. Now, if we see that, so a last loss on the training data was 2.02, and you can say the accuracy of our model on the test data is 0.53, not very bad. So we can say that the model was able to produce a 50% with 50% accuracy. So on the test data set, 50% samples it classified correctly, and the remaining 50% it could not classify correctly. Right. Now suppose, as I said, that the purpose is like now we have trained our model on few selected samples. Now let us see how does this model performs on our entire training image. Right. So first I will show you what is our predictor image. So this is Visag LULC that I have taken six bands from Sentinel-2 image. So I'm just opening the image for reading. So I'm opening the file using GDAL. So if I just, out of 6 bands, because we can just use 3 bands for visualization. If I see the image looks like this. So this is the input. This will be the input image to our model. So this image we will give as input to our model pixel by pixel, and the model will produce the classification map, like which class that particular pixel, all pixels in this image falls to, right? So I'm first reading all these bands from that image and then transforming, or you say reshaping the data to the format required by the model. So this part is just doing the reshaping of the data to the format required by the model. Then the second step is same as what we have done for the test while doing evaluation of the model, like model.eval, then model and giving as input our entire image, the shape prediction feature. Then it produces the probability of every pixel being into that class. Now with this argmax function, we are taking only the class with maximum probability. Like if you say softmax will produce the probability like this particular pixel falls to the class 1 with 30% probability, class 2 with 40% probability, class 5 60% probability. So we wish to take the class to which the prediction probability is highest, so that we can take with the argmax function, right? So with the argmax function we predict the levels, so predicted levels. Then I am just reshaping the outputs to the same as our input image. Now if you see, this is the classified map given input image. So the map may not be accurate because the labels are not, map is not properly labeled. Suppose if you wish to label it as, because we have taken the reference map as ISA's world cover map as the reference map. Now suppose if I wish to make a meaningful map so that I can attach legends to that map. So first I am creating a color map, listed color map using the, like, now every class I want to give the color as the color given in ISA's world cover map. So for that I have just created a color map using matplotlib, and this part is for showing. Anyway, finally our data is predicted labels, and I'm attaching just a land cover color map which I have attached to that, and these are the labels or legends to the map. So now you can say that this is the land cover map produced for the given Sentinel-2 image of containing 6 bands. So this way we can use deep learning. So the output of this may not be quite good because the output looks quite clumsy, right? And the accuracy of the model also is 50% only. But to great extent, you can say that the model has done a good job. So this maybe you can use as a starting point for entering into deep learning. So with that, I come to the end of my lecture. If you have any questions, you can post it on the chat box. Thank you very much for.
Thank you, Bhandari. Thank you for very nice demonstrating on deep learning. So with this, we have now completed all presentations. So now request if our DLP members are there, so if they can show us the questions which have been asked. Is it possible? derive a lot of parameters related to the ocean surface and for example, wind vectors or wave heights, or for example, sea surface temperature, sea salinity. So you have a range of parameters which we derived using, or for example, oil spills in using microwave data. So there are many areas where actually machine learning can be used. There is no, I think there is no issue as such, because oceanic data is also collected. Satellites collects a lot of data over oceans, and sometime, like for example, oil spill, detecting oil spill using microwave data require very high temporal repeativity, and today that kind of data is available. And if you apply machine learning algorithm or deep learning particularly, they will be able to provide you the oil spill information alert or its monitoring. So those kind of things are possible. Yes. Then the other question is classify each pixel individually all time. Won't it be better to do a small cluster of pixel instead for computational efficiency? So this question I will request Bhandari ji if you can just read this question. The question is, classify each pixel individually all the time. Won't it do better to do a small cluster of pixel instead of okay. Are you able to read it?
Yeah, yes, sir. I am able to see that. I will answer.
Okay.
So actually, what happens? So as you are right that generally, so we don't classify on the pixels value. So generally we classify on the entire patch, say 32 cross 32 or 60 cross 62. Because when we are classifying based on the single pixel, we are just taking into consideration only that pixel. But when you see remote sensing images, right, so we need to take into consideration the neighborhood as well. So because this was just for a demonstration, so I have used the classification on the single pixel based value. But generally we do the classification based on the patches. So that what was explained to you in the UNet model or something, right? So there we don't classify based on the single pixels value. There we classify on the patches or say clusters of pixels only, not on the single pixel.
Thank you, Bhandari ji. Then there is another question: use of extended padding. So will you be able to give this answer? Why extended padding is useful? In particular in CNN, I think that we use this padding in order to retain this corner pixels of the image. Dr. Ishwari, are you there? Okay. So meantime, can we take another question? So this is a general question that what is the advantage of deep learning in ecology, and how can we utilize it in any scheme? So as I told you know that in ecology we have we are collecting data in a range of aspects of ecology. For example, individual species and population, community, ecosystem, both structure, composition. So we are collecting a lot of data about the pattern and processes of ecosystem. And nowadays, because as I showed in my presentation, there are many cases. We have today cameras on ground, terrestrial cameras. We have many sensors which continuously collect data on different aspects like environment, different biotic factors. So when you have so much of data, and for example, you want to understand in ecology how species distribution is affected by changes in the for example, temperature conditions. So you have both the data today. One set of like camera trap is recording the species presence, species behavior also, and whereas the other set of temperature sensors are there in situ measurements. So they are collecting continuous temperature data. If you relate both the data, deep learning would give you definitely a very good answer, because
these data sets are very large, and sensors are operated over an entire year after year. So if you specific behavior of the animal at a particular high temperature, for example, during the heat and during the summertime, if you want to understand how animal behavior has changed. So are so many questions in ecology today. And I think that it is not that the deep learning ecology will get benefited from deep learning. It is other way around also. Deep learning will also get benefited from ecology, because ecology provides a kind of scope, a kind of questions, which I think the other discipline we may not be able to provide. These biological processes are very complex processes, and by its nature itself, the deep learning is meant to explain the complex pattern and phenomena. So I think I am able to answer this question in a very short time. The other question is, how can deep learning models be integrated in ecological workflow to enhance species monitoring, predict biodiversity change, inform conservation strategy? Oh, so this is partly I have answered these questions. So I think that, monitoring aspect, you said that monitoring aspect. So monitoring aspect, for example, let us give again an example of for example, camera traps. Camera traps are today all over India in different national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, and even forest division. We have installed camera trap. They are continuously monitoring the movement of the animal. And now what happens that, and these animals, otherwise sighting is very difficult. And so these animals data are continuously monitored. So if you analyze this type of camera trap data using AI or deep learning, then it will be able to actually help you in whether the population over time it's growing or whether it's declining. So this is change in the biodiversity actually. So then you will be able to understand the population decline and population increase, and then if there is significant changes there, you can relate it with the climate change, like temperature and precipitation change, and then you can get an answer that what the kind of changes are happening in the population of, for example, tiger, are really related to the climate change or not. So this could be one way of doing the things. So the next question is, can deep learning be used to study environmental DNA analysis? Oh, so this is again, environmental DNA analysis is a very specific analysis, because if you are doing this kind of job, so DNA analysis is where it very promising field again, because we are doing this analysis for abiotic and biotic and understanding conditions in a particular area, and particularly to understand the kind of changes which otherwise are not possible to detect. So environmental DNA has become very important, and here also I think deep learning can be really useful, because again the same thing, because if you have a large data set, environmental data set, DNA data sets, how will you analyze it? And really it is not possible, and data will be continuously collected. So if you collect more data, you have large volume of data, again deep learning scope for deep learning and machine learning can always be there. Yes. Then there is a question, for patch of land, how do we read the spectral data? Here spectral data was available for each pixel. Do satellite deliver data as an overall average for different patch of land? Bhandari, are you able to see this? This question, for patches of land, how do we read the spectral data?
I will read the question, sir. I will answer it.
Okay, thank you.
See, for demonstration here, we have used a satellite image. So that satellite image gives an average, depending on the spatial resolution of the satellite, it gives the spectral value for that entire patch of land. Maybe suppose the spectral resolution of the satellite is 10 meters. Then you can say that for an area of 10 cross 10, that is represented as a pixel, a patch of land of Earth, of 10 cross 10 meter is represented as a pixel, and that the average of that 10 cross 10 area is represented as a spectral value of that piece of land, or whatever you get 10 cross 10, depending on the spatial resolution of the satellite.
Okay, thank you, Bhandari. So we have any questions? Ashok, I think these are the only questions, no?
Yes, sir.
Hello? I think you everyone, thank you for, because we are already in the mid of the lunch time. So thank you for being with us, and also thanks all the our esteemed speakers for giving very valuable talk today. And I'm very much hopeful that the whatever content today we have delivered, that it certainly have benefited our participants. And so thank you very much all the participants of this workshop for joining these workshops. And the special thanks I would like to give our DLP teams for very effectively, very efficiently managing all these workshop organizations. So thank you very much, and all the our speakers in Bhandari ji, you are there. So everybody, I thank you very much for your lecture and addressing the questions also. Thank you so much. Thank you.